So we're going to go into the store,
Yes.
and I'd like you to, if you can, just show me, like, you got your $23,
Right.
how you make it work.
Okay, I will show you very easily.
Okay, let's
It
do it.
won't take long at all.
Hi, it's Trey Kay, and I'm here with Renee Kittle. It's a Wednesday afternoon, and we're in a grocery store parking lot in Elkins, West Virginia.
So this is our shopping day, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad I could help out.
Me too.
Renee is 74. She's about 2 heads shorter than me. Her hair is thrown up in a scrunchie. She's wearing red nails and a bright teal top with matching leggings.
All right, we're going to look at bread. I can't believe these prices.
Each month, Renee heads to this store with $23 from the federal government's SNAP program. SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It used to be called food stamps. Renee beelines past the produce section, beyond the tower of packaged strawberries, the cold case full of carrots and greens. She's not here to buy what she wants to eat. She's here to stretch that money to the very last penny.
Oh, that's garlic bread. And it is $2.69.
Roughly 18% of residents in the Mountain State use SNAP. Nationally, that number is more like 12%. That means 42 million people across America need help feeding themselves.
It, believe it or not, has its roots in West Virginia. It started with John F. Kennedy. President Kennedy started the original food stamp program in McDowell County, West Virginia.
That's Seth DeStefano. Seth is a lobbyist for support programs like SNAP, which became a centerpiece of President Lyndon Johnson's social reform initiatives called the Great Society.
This administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
That was in 1964. Since then, food support for low-income Americans has reduced poverty and hunger. Research shows it has also decreased low birth weight and disease later in life for kids who grew up with food assistance.
It truly is one of the most effective anti-poverty programs in the history of the United States.
If we think of these benefits like a pipeline, and that would start with a budget vote on Capitol Hill, how does SNAP money get to the families like those in West Virginia?
SNAP dollars are settled once every 5 years in a piece of legislation referred to as the Farm Bill.
Yep, that's right. Low-income food programs are funded through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And the Farm Bill is a mammoth piece of policy. Lawmakers revise it every 5 years, and it funds an amazing array of programs, including agricultural subsidies, conservation, and rural development.
And the specific part of the Farm Bill where SNAP dollars are settled is called the Nutrician title. This is also where TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program that support food banks around the country and here in West Virginia, also is located.
SNAP dollars have a major influence on the American diet, giving people access to food they might not have otherwise. In a way, Seth DeStefano says SNAP dollars create their own kind of economy across the country.
They keep grocery stores open. They keep people driving the trucks to deliver the groceries. They keep people stocking the shelves and doing things like that. That when you look at the entire economic footprint of what SNAP does in West Virginia, the total economic impact is in the hundreds and hundreds of millions.
And like most major federal programs, SNAP is also a magnet for political division. It's been that way for decades.
Just like any animal in the species, when you take away their freedom and their dignity and their ability, they can't provide for themselves, and that is what the Democrats' proposal does on welfare.
Gentleman's recognized for 34 years here, I thought I'd heard it all, but we have a millionaire from Florida comparing children to alligators, and we have a gentlelady in red over here comparing children to wolves. That tops it all.
I think what you've seen more of over the past couple of years is states, under the pretense of increasing workforce participation or better employment outcomes, pushing a lot of very negative policies that make it much harder to get SNAP at the outset. And if you do manage to get through the bureaucracy, it makes it very difficult to hold on to SNAP benefits. One good example is the classic work reporting requirement. States across the country, including West Virginia, unfortunately, in 2018, insisted that if you fall into a certain category, a childless adult, or as is deceptively referred to, the able-bodied adult without dependent, unless you can prove to DHHR that you are holding down 20 hours of work per week, then you are automatically kicked off of SNAP.
That reference to DHHR you just heard from DiStefano, that's the state agency that oversees the SNAP program in West Virginia. Nutrition support and hunger in America has shifted since President Johnson signed food stamps into law. The specifics, who is eligible, how much people get, where they can spend their benefits, can change between administrations and election cycles. That political yo-yo affects people's lives. Like many social issues, this is a story partly about policy and politics. Generally, one side wants less government spending on programs, and the other wants more. But telling that story seems a little boring, and not nearly as nuanced as the debate really is. Instead, today we'll hear from some people who let me into their lives to talk about their experience with SNAP. Our story comes in 3 parts from 3 people. From West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX, you're listening to Us and Them, the show where we tell stories about the things that divide Americans. I'm Trey Kay. After our grocery store run, Renee Kittle and I got to talking about food again.
But you can't, nobody around here sells good strawberries anymore.
I bet you can make a cobbler, right?
I can make cobbler. And blackberry cobbler, oh my God, I love it. My grandma used to make apple dumplings. She put a big pot of boiling water on the stove, and she would fix her apple dumplings, and she would drop them in the water and let them come to the top.
Right.
And she never baked them. They were always in boiling water.
Huh.
And I just have tried to find a recipe, and I can't.
Left, right?
Yes. But they were mouth-watering. I live in a rural location in Harding, West Virginia. There's probably about 35 people live in this community.
And so this house we're sitting in right now, you're hoping to sell?
Yes, it's a 1975 mobile home built onto. There's so much home repair needs done that I can't afford, so I had to put my house up for sale in order to try to survive. My husband and I had been married 48 years, and he passed away in March of 2019. We had a pretty good life. We got to go for rides. We got to go visit relatives. Got to go to my mom and dad's grave, his mom and dad's grave. We just had a really good life together. I always tried to cook. We always had breakfast. When we were working, we packed our lunch and took it, and I always come home and fixed a good supper. Fried potatoes, cornbread and beans, hamburgers, pizzas, all kinds of good food at the time when we could afford it. A meal like now is a bowl of soup and maybe a grilled cheese sandwich. Sometimes I do splurge and fry an egg. I've worked all my life ever since I was 16 years old. I started out babysitting. Then I went to work at Geno's. I worked at Elkins Industries for 23 years, but they went out of business. The furniture industry went to China. And then I got a job at Youth Health Service as a receptionist. When he passed away, then I lost my retirement benefits because I could only draw from what he drawed.
What can you tell me about how you live on a fixed income?
How I live on a fixed very scarcely. I have to buy pellets for my wood stoves in the winter months. I have to pay the water bill, all my bills with my income, and my bills of $1,300 a month. I am lucky if I have $200, maybe $250 left over to try to find food. I don't go very much because I can't afford the gas. My neighbor sometimes will bring me supper, and that's been a blessing to me. They try to help me with food-wise as much as they can. For SNAP, I qualify for $23 a month.
That just sounds like nothing.
It is nothing. They just tell me that they've reviewed my case, and that's as much as they can do.
And what do you say?
I'm totally dumbfounded. I'm sorry, but that's just the way I feel. I tried to get a SNAP, not a SNAP, but a Medicaid card because I've got a broken tooth, and I can't even qualify for that because they say my income's too high. And I went to rehabilitation and checked with them, and the lady at the desk said, we can help with dentures if you're working, but if you're not working, we can't help. They won't help because I'm almost 75 years old.
Where do you hope to go?
I guess my hope is to go to West Union with my daughter and son-in-law.
And does that seem like a good situation to go to?
I'm reluctant. I've lived here by myself now the last 3 years, and I'm not sure that I'm ready to move in with somebody else. But until I can do better, I have to.
That's Renee Kittle in Harding, West Virginia. Nearly 45% of the SNAP recipients in the state are older adults or families with someone who's disabled. About 58% are families with children, which brings us to Chapter 2, the mom. Mary Catherine Molitor is 34 years old and lives in St. Albans, West Virginia with her 3 daughters and an old dog named Brenda. Mary Catherine works full-time at a local credit union, making about $13 an hour. The very first time we spoke on the phone, she wasn't sure she wanted to talk about SNAP. In her words, it's her dirty little secret. We ended up talking twice, first in our studios in Charleston, and then at her house. And that's partly because with a home full of young kids, things are sometimes a little too chaotic to just sit and talk. Here is a Saturday afternoon in Mary Catherine's world.
Come here. You're okay, sis.
So, can you tell me everybody's name?
All right. So, Charlie, Amelia Grace, Collie Renee.
She made a face when you said her name.
That's her sassy face.
And can I ask you a question? Where have you been?
Church camp.
So, you need to be a little more specific. Where have you been in the last 2 weeks or the last week?
Last week.
Last week, okay.
So how was church camp?
Very good.
Did you sing songs?
Yes.
What else did you do?
We had a shaving cream battle.
That sounds like it was a lot of fun, no?
Yeah, and I let people sprayed me with it.
Okay, so Amelia got back from church camp today, and I met her Aunt Maddie and my nieces, and we go to the Capitol Market so often that they've started saving grocery carts for me of vegetables that are going to be disposed of. Uh-huh. And so I got me a grocery cart full of veggies for free to plant in my garden.
Can you show them to me?
Yeah. Listen, everybody knows I love my gardening. Those are pumpkins right there. Volunteers. All those tomatoes, volunteers. Sunflowers, volunteers.
And to folks who don't know what a volunteer, what is that?
So pumpkins after Halloween, I threw my pumpkins into a couple of different areas, and they rotted, seeded, and they are giants now. They grow on their own. They volunteer.
Apparently they're cooperating with you.
Oh, yes. The pumpkins are cooperating a little too well. But, if anybody needs a free pumpkin this year, just come to my house.
Do you grow a lot of your food?
I try to. That's kind of what my end goal is to be as self-sustainable as possible.
You're growing all this food in the summertime. Do you can it?
I tried canning once before, about 5 years ago, and I made botulism. There was kind of like a fungus growing on top of my red sauce, and I was going to use it anyways. And my ex-husband's cousin was at my house, and he was like, that is botulism. So that will be something that there's a lot of classes that WVSU, their extension program, they offer classes. So when it's time to start canning, I plan on going there and being like, hi, I don't want to make botulism this year. Hey, Brando. Dude, you would get torn up by those dogs. You need to go inside. I think the only time that I ever really heard about food stamps was being portrayed on TV or kids in school being mean. I do know that my mom and my dad, when they were married, Dad had just started in the Marine Corps, and they received WIC for me. When I got pregnant and I decided, because I had a choice, I knew that I was taking on the responsibility for myself and for the little human growing in my belly. I didn't understand how, on top of everything that's going on, like rent, mortgage, utilities, gas prices, car payments, I was drowning. Thank God for my mom. She kind of eased me into it. Listen, your dad worked. He was in the military. I worked. And we still needed a little bit of help. So WIC is Women's, Infants, and Children. It's a nutrition program. They gave me a wonderful breast pump, and I was able to pump at work and get breast milk for the following day at daycare since I was working and she was there. And then they give you X amount of cereal, milk, formula. And then we stopped. And so then trying just to find something that she would eat and then being able to afford it, that was scary. I would go grocery shopping. She was getting older at this point, and protein is just so expensive. I don't cry a lot, but when I do cry, it's because it's crisis mode. Obviously I was not going to a food pantry because I'm not one of those people, right? Of course, my first concern is always going to be my kid. So my mom was like, why don't you apply for food stamps? It's not as easy as showing up, shaking hands with somebody and saying, hi, I want money for food. Nice to meet you. Thank goodness I have a computer. Thank goodness I have internet. Thank goodness I keep records, because otherwise I don't know how a lot of people are able to apply. Originally, I think I was only getting $50. I knew that $50 would get her fed. I was no longer scared.
My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak with you about our nation's unprecedented response to the coronavirus outbreak that started in China and is now spreading throughout the world. Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic.
My twins were born April 23rd, 2020, and I was able to work from home up until the twins were born. And I came back to work and I was like, hey, I would like to come back at this time. And it was awkward silence. We're going to have to lay you off.
The question is on adoption of the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion is adopted.
Congress passed the package on top of getting an increase in food and then the benefits that Congress had put through. I have never felt more secure, ever. Never have I ever. I mean, I'm talking $500 or $600 difference in the amount of food stamps that I was getting. with COVID, I would be able to go to the grocery store a couple more times and just get like, the girls really want hot dogs tonight. I could go get those. Or they really want spaghetti and I need to go pick up Italian sausage because I make a really good spaghetti and it's half beef and half Italian sausage. Listen, and I can't do that anymore. It is what it is. I'm still grateful for the assistance that I get, but you can't have any meal changes. And then AEP just increased their electric, and now my electric bill is like $250, $275. I've never been put in a position where I actually have to choose between electric and food. It's really hard.
Well, one of the reasons that we wanted to talk with you is there's this idea that there's a typical person in America who uses SNAP benefits. What do you think about that?
That's why I don't tell people that I use SNAP benefits, because I know what that person looks like, and that person doesn't look like me. That person doesn't have a college education. That person doesn't have a full-time job. That person isn't who I am. I find it embarrassing. I don't want to admit that I need help. But I also think that more people need to understand that not everybody brags about it. Not everybody talks about it. I think that the statistic is that more people that are on social benefits, they do have a job. They do have an education. They are productive members of society. They're doing all the things. It's just so stinking hard. I am always terrified that somebody's going to find out who, if I had just worked a little bit harder or had made this move or that move, we can absolutely pick our lives apart. But I promise I have trimmed every ounce of fat, and I'm constantly in the red, even with social welfare, even with the welfare, even being a welfare mom, I am always in the red. I'm a lucky one because I've got really good credit and I have an education. And yes, absolutely, one day I am going to pay this back tenfold to society. I already try to do it. I try to tell people that are struggling what's out there. I've got a lot of knowledge. Do I believe that people buy 4 cases of Mountain Dew and dozens of bags of Doritos with food stamps? Absolutely. Do you think that they have running water? Do you think they have a stove or a refrigerator? You literally cannot cut food from people if they don't have the resources to create food. If you want to throw in some like educational classes where you pick people up because not everybody has a vehicle and not everybody can afford gas, then let's do that. Let's create a community garden where it's accessible to everybody. Let's create cooking classes where we learn how to cook healthy things. Like, it's not just about the money. It's not just the $500. Oh, you get $500. Obviously, you've got plenty. I used to be that judgmental person. And I have been humbled very quickly by the position in my life. But when it comes to food stamps, I am the norm. I am a welfare mom.
Yes, it is. It's staying up there. It's my turn. It's my turn. Mom.
You're getting called.
Mom.
Mom.
Yes.
So there's people like a legislator who is critical, worried that we need to be mindful about the amount of money that we spend on SNAP. And I guess also one of the things that he might be considering is to kind of judge need and whether or not they're working, et cetera.
I mean, like, give me bullet points and I'd be happy to discuss it with him, and he can come to my house and watch what I cook and what I eat.
Mom.
I think they're so far removed from what it is to be a just low income. And I mean, if they want to sit down and show me how to budget my money better or what to cook or whatever, I'm always open to, more information. Like, believe me, I have reached out to every organization that I can think of. And I don't know how to utilize my time anymore. I don't know how to be any more efficient. I am giving everything all the time. And so if they think they can do it better than me, same situation, same circumstances, same everything, apples for apples, I would love to see them try. Here, let's swap roles. I'll sit in legislature and get your income and make rules about you.
That's Mary Catherine Molitor in St. Albans, West Virginia. After a break, we'll hear from one more person whose conversation held some surprises for me.
I can tell you that there were many, many meals that I wouldn't have had my parents not been on food stamps.
You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council, the CRC Foundation, and the Daywood Foundation.
Music lifts us up and brings us together, even when we can't get together in person. Mountain Stage brings you live performances on the air, online, and in our podcast. They remind you how it feels to be in a live audience listening to live music. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find a link to our stations and our podcast online at mountainstage.org.
It's Trey, and this is Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Today we're talking about SNAP, the federal program that provides food assistance for low-income Americans. Initially, we thought about focusing this episode on where SNAP fits into America's larger political debate. After all, this is Us and Them. We could hear from SNAP recipients and from those who play a role in the political process of shaping its benefits. Then we came across someone who knows both.
I think that a lot of lawmakers are reluctant to talk about some of these needs because in doing so, you run the risk of coming across less than compassionate.
That brings us to part 3 of our story, the politician. Jonathan Pinson represents the 17th District of West Virginia's House of Delegates. It sits on the western border of the state and includes parts of Mason and Jackson counties. Pinson was first elected in 2020. He's a Republican and a Baptist pastor.
I believe that the SNAP benefit program overall is well-suited and well-intended to address the need of hunger. When you look at it from a societal point of view, there are certainly some great advantages to that, not just to the supplemental side of the income, but then also to the nutritional aspects of it as well, so that we're encouraging the fruits and the vegetables and the dairies and all of these things.
That got me thinking about my trip to the grocery store with Renee Kittle. I explained her situation to him and how she couldn't afford any of that healthy produce.
Well, I think that any rational person would empathize with that situation. What we find really when we're considering the SNAP program or other governmental assistance programs is a place where a multitude of issues converge. And oftentimes, it's been my experience that what we as a government should do and what we as a government can do are two different things. Having a working understanding of the fact that state government and federal government alike has to work within budget. We could bring into this convergence of all the issues converging into her home and say, well, maybe if we would waste less money in other places, we would have more opportunity to help in situations like the SNAP program.
Is it her waste or is our government?
It is a governmental waste. The problem with government as a whole and spending in government, in my opinion, is there's very rarely strong accountability to go back into the government spending on any particular topic, testing, research, community programs. There's very rarely any accountability as to whether we're getting a return on our investment, because there's no matrix by which you say, this has been successful and we need to continue it, or this has not produced the results that we hoped that it would. Ultimately, I think that that's how you see government budgets continue to sprawl. It's mind-boggling when you stop to consider that right now, June of 2023, our national debt rests at about $31 trillion. And it's my feeling that most of that debt could have been avoided if we would have placed a greater emphasis on living within our means, we as a government, and managing the resources that we have well.
Are your concerns about SNAP only financial? Or do you have other issues with the idea of the government giving money to help people with food?
I cannot say that I have issues with the assistance in general. One of the reasons that I can't say that I'm opposed to that is because I think back prior to my adoption.
You were adopted.
I was adopted at 15 years old. So I go back to before I was adopted. I go back to Saturday mornings sitting in a line at the Armory in Florida, picking up cornflakes and powdered milk and 5-pound jugs of peanut butter. And I can tell you that there were many, many meals that I wouldn't have had my parents not been on food stamps and, at the time, commodities. That's what it was called. So I can't say that I'm opposed to the government helping when help is warranted. And I recall a time where, even as a child, I wondered, are we the ones that really need this? Or are there other people who could benefit from it in a greater fashion? But my parents, they did not work. I recall probably from the age of 10 years old.
Because they couldn't find work?
I can't say it was because they couldn't find work. So even as a child,
I'm sorry. Can you say more about that? It feels like that's something that's hanging out there in the air.
Well, no, I don't think I'll say any more about it. I wonder if they could have. Maybe that's the way that I'll frame it. To be fair, both my mother and father are deceased. So maybe leaving it as a question that I had as a child, evaluating my surroundings. Life has a way of dealing us a tough hand at times or knocking us down at times. And again, I believe that our government can be a part of the solution to helping people get back on their feet. But if I came to you and asked for help, and you were at a position where you could help me, that's different than me coming to you and saying, I want you to finance me the rest of my life. I want you to take on the financial responsibility of me the rest of my life. So I would encourage, as we look at several of the social help programs, the social benefit programs, to consider these as temporary helps for a period of time, helping people get back on their feet. And after that time, if there needs to be an evaluation of, well, you're not quite there yet, maybe an extension of benefits. But again, going back to something that I said earlier, that's often not what we see.
So am I hearing you say that we may need to be more specific about the rules that we make in these benefit initiatives?
I believe being more specific, not just in the rules that we make, but again, identifying who we're trying to help. Because, and really those are one and the same. My fear is that we have such a broad base of people that we as a government are trying to do so much for, and as a result, it's spread so thin that it's not really a help to very many people. The lady that you mentioned, $23 a month. That's very little help when it sounds as if she is one who would stand for more help, greater help.
I wasn't prepared to ask you this, but I'm just following up on this. So in a way, I feel like in that situation with you, it seems very consistent with what you've said earlier, which is, are there people who are getting benefits who could be doing more? And in your particular case, you were sensing that perhaps, and this is just me assessing, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that perhaps your parents could have done more. And that was something that you were thinking about when you were young.
And still to this day, I think about it. If there are addiction issues, if there are mental health issues that all converge to a place to where people either, number one, can't work, or number two, won't work, we have to determine to what level government is going to be responsible for them and to what level we're going to expect individuals to be responsible for themselves. And that's where it gets so complex, because you have one side saying, well, it is our responsibility, we must. And you have another side saying, well, they bear a large part of the responsibility as well, so we can help a little, but they're going to have to help themselves. And that's where it gets really difficult.
What do your conversations with other Republicans on this issue look like? I mean, I think some people might be surprised to hear a Republican advocating that SNAP has a place in society. And even the idea even the idea of potentially raising the benefits for some people.
Well, as with every topic, you're going to find a wide range of opinions. You're going to find some people, Republicans, maybe some Democrats as well, that say, no, there's not a place. You're going to find some people that say, well, we have a greater responsibility. We need to do more. So I think that where we have came from and what we have experienced largely shapes who we are and our belief system. So having seen the things that I've seen in my life and having been through what I've been through, that helps generate my belief system on this topic. So if you put in place a mechanism to evaluate and to investigate to ensure that we're helping the people who most greatly need it, I wouldn't feel that that's a larger government, but rather a more targeted, more efficient government.
We prepare for these interviews and we're kind of like trying to imagine the way that you would answer some of these questions. And I was wondering, like, were you going to hit me with a bunch of slogans? I'm wondering, you as a relatively young politician, how you feel about maybe getting beyond the slogans that kind of might appeal to people on a political basis, but to really talk about what is a real solution to some of these challenges.
Well, I think that the two words that you just used really summarize where we're at. You can have slogans or you can have solutions. And the problem with slogans is it drives you to either end of the spectrum, to where, again, the government can't spend enough money. Let's print some money to pour toward these programs, one end of the spectrum. And then the opposite end of that spectrum is there's no place at all in government spending for any of these social programs. Because of my lived experience as a child who can't go out and earn a living to provide food for the dinner table, knowing that that's where it came from, I can empathize with the center solution-focused, solution-based perspective of this. But we've got to be cautious to continue to focus on the center and focus on the solution. Here's my fear, and I think the fear of many Americans with the opioid epidemic and my generation that was exposed to these potent drugs, people who now are so chemically addicted that though many of them want to get help, they're struggling every single day. My fear is that this has really taken a sharp turn for the worse. We're facing a chemical problem that millions and millions of Americans can't provide for themselves, and they're having children and can't provide for them. And that has intertwined itself in such a great fashion in our culture here in West Virginia. There is a reason why we lead the country in children in foster care, in children that need adoption. And it's not because we've got more children than other states. We have more people who are addicted to drugs and can't provide for their children, so they get their children taken at a greater rate than other states.
And in that situation, in some cases, extended family has to step up, and in some cases, government. So you can't really be on the we can't do enough or to heck with them, they got to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Somebody has to step up. At least that's what I feel like I'm hearing from you.
That's exactly what you're hearing. After I got adopted, I had the opportunity to get active in the West Virginia FFA program up through...
That's Future Farmers of America?
That's correct. Up through high school, and then 2005, 2006, had the opportunity to be elected state FFA president. And again, the Lord used the FFA program in my life in a very significant fashion. So the FFA Creed has a statement in it, and it really summarizes my position, and that is less need for charity and more of it when it's needed. We cannot foot the bill for everyone forever, but when there is a requirement, when there is a need, a legitimate need, then we have a responsibility to be there to help.
I'm still thinking about that conversation with Delegate Jonathan Penson. As we planned this episode and talked about the interviews we'd hoped for, we searched for someone with concerns about SNAP and other federal support programs. I was so certain I knew what Delegate Penson's talking points would be. Then he told me about eating as a kid on food stamps and how it shaped his worldview. That was a really important reminder for me. Not only that our experiences define our values, but that hunger and poverty are universal experiences. You can disagree with him or Renee or Mary Catherine on what the solution should be, but you can't say they don't understand the issues. Maybe there's no us and them here because we're all vulnerable to hard times. Maybe that's why these problems are so hard to talk about, and why they will continue to color political debates across the country. You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this show was me, Trey Kay, Christina Stella, and Kate Smith. Special thanks to West Virginia Senator Mike Stewart, Delegate Mike Pushkin, and B. Weeks Asbury. Michael Lipton, Tristan Lozow, and Ahmed Solomon wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the West Virginia Humanities Council, the CRC Foundation, and the Daywood Foundation. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode. Would you share them with us on Facebook or on Twitter at Us Them Podcast? Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the Mentorship Program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
From